right, guys, welcome back to another video. Hope everybody is enjoying their long Labor Day weekend, especially today since it is Monday and most people are off today. But we have some gaming news to get into to talk about that happened over the weekend. So we will start off here talking about the Xbox Series S, which has been a conversation throughout this entire generation, and go on to many other things that happened. But before we continue, if you do enjoy gaming news and content, make sure to hit that subscribe button, share the video, like the video, all of that good stuff, and check out my Spotify link is in the description. So over the weekend, there was a discussion about Stalker 2 and the Xbox Series S and the performance of the Xbox Series S. And again, if it is holding back this generation, if it was a mistake, and all of that type of stuff. And the reason why this happened was because there was this article that was published and this news that was put out that saying Stalker's 2 developers are optimizing, that's the keyword, optimizing, the game for the Xbox Series S, currently running at 25 frames per second, with significant support from Xbox to enhance performance ahead of the November 20th release on Game Pass. So this game is still about 3 months out, and they are in the optimizing stages, which is generally what happens leading up to the release before the game goes gold and is ready to ship. And there was just a comment here that a developer made during Gamescom about where they were with the Series S version. And they had thought that they had said, I mean, the reporters had thought that they had said that it was at 25 frames per second. This just created a whole discussion again about the Series S and it being an issue. And all of that stuff, to me, now we're 4 years into this generation, is still kind of ridiculous. I feel like it's people just kind of grasping and really sitting there and hoping that their initial opinions of the Xbox Series S strategy will come true. And I'm not saying that it won't. It could in a year from now, it could in 2 years from now, it could on the last day of this generation where every game comes out just can't run on the Xbox Series S and it's just gone to complete crap. But that is not what has been happening this generation. The majority of games that do release run fine on the Series S. If you look at it comparatively to the price point it sells at and to the output that they are trying to achieve, the Xbox Series S has not been a problem. There are some complaints here and there. There's been a couple of issues with like the Baldur's Gate 3 because of the split screen. They had to delay the release of it on Xbox with the whole parity clause, but it got worked out and the game runs fine. And I think even runs better now on everything once they were able to continue to optimize the console itself. You've seen developers or just even character artists that I don't even think do the true optimization of these games on these consoles make comments on social media that completely blow up, and everyone takes that as the word of what's wrong with the Xbox Series S, when in reality, majority of cases for the Xbox Series S have been completely fine. Most games run good. Most games run completely okay for what they are looking for with the Xbox Series S. So this here was another thing that just brought that conversation up once again. And again, I think it's just people, when news is slow, like to focus on the Series S for some reason. Now, the interesting thing about this entire story is that it was a mistake. The lead producer of the game misspoke, and he clarifies that here. This is Slava Lukin-Yanenka. Hopefully I said that correctly. And he's the lead producer of Stalker. And he says this, he tweets this out, quote tweets the article and says, "Just to clarify my thoughts, I said something during the interview on Gamescom. Yes, that's what I said. However, it seems something glitched in my head during the interview as I wanted to say around 35 frames per second." So as of right now, Stalker 2, which if you've seen the gameplay footage of the game, looks phenomenal graphically, like very high fidelity. It's going to be probably one of the better looking games that does release this year. It's currently running at 35 FPS on the Xbox Series S, and they are still in the optimization stage of the game itself. Best guess here is they're going to bring it down and just get it at a steady 30 FPS. I don't know if they're going to try to get it up to a 60 FPS. I would love if that's the direction they decide to go between now and November 20th, or even if it does come out a little bit later on the S in terms of a patch for a performance mode, just get like a 1080p dynamic 1080p 60 frames per second mode. I think Xbox Series S gamers will appreciate that. But as of right now, that 10 FPS, and this is how crazy it is if you sit down logically and think about it, a 10 FPS difference in what he said and the mistake that he made when speaking makes a whole wild difference on whether the Xbox Series S was a mistake or is ruining this generation of video games. I think it's kind of absurd that it's still such a major talking point every time anything does come out. As of right now, there's overwhelming evidence, there's overwhelming proof out there that games run on the Series S, they run fine, they meet their targets, and we are 4 years into this generation. Now, as I said, that could change over the next 2 years if games get significantly more powerful. Maybe Unreal Engine 5 starts having issues, things like that. And then the last 2 years of this console, every game coming out on the Series S is just holding back Xbox releases and games aren't optimized. I'm doubtful that could change, but as of right now, the narrative of trying to spin it, the Xbox Series S is just this massive issue in video games. To me, it's just kind of tiresome at this point. But as of right now, the Stalker 2 optimization is at 35 FPS. Game has until November 20th to release, and we'll see what they do, how they get it steady, if they maybe even give a 40 FPS option. Who knows? But Stalker 2, aside from all of this talk, looks phenomenal, and I cannot wait to play it. Now, we have some interesting news here when it comes to Game Pass deals and things like that. As we know, brand new IP from Capcom launched onto Xbox Game Pass day one, Kunitsugami Path of Goddess. And a lot of when this happens, people wonder, how do these deals come to pass? How do these games end up on Game Pass? Is it just Xbox going out there and purchasing it, and then it launches onto the service? They cover the entirety of the marketing development costs, or maybe they do a deal of how many times the game gets downloaded. They will pay the publisher for that. Well, it looks like we have some more info here for this Capcom game. As Phil Spencer in an interview was talking about, he talked about a lot of things. He talked about passing on Destiny 1 exclusivity way back on the Xbox One, Guitar Hero exclusivity, all these types of things. But this was an interesting one for the current day of games, saying here that according to Phil Spencer at Gamescom, Xbox helped by financially funding and supporting Capcom's new title, Kunitsugami Path of Goddess. So if you're wondering how this game launched onto Game Pass day one and how Capcom was able to actually create a brand new IP and bring something new to the table of gaming, it's because Xbox went out there and helped them fund the game and bring it over. And I mean, they brought it to Game Pass. Game still releases on all of the other platforms, which is significantly different than what we have seen recently when talking about Black Myth Wukong, and how PlayStation, from what the rumors are saying, and what it looks like it is true at this point, the exclusivity deal that they created to help get that game developed and out on the consoles, they kept it off Xbox. Xbox is making deals here, and their focus is to get games into Game Pass day one to increase their subscription and ecosystem. And this was another one of those games here. Anytime Capcom puts out a new IP, even if it's not the most significantly popular IP, like I'm not sure how great this game did. I'm sure it did decent enough, but it's Capcom. People's eyes open up and they're interested in what the game is all about. So just some cool stuff there in terms of the deal side of Xbox and Game Pass games. Now we have some more info here about potentially a brand new AAA RPG FPS title that Blizzard could be working on. And this is via LinkedIn from a Blizzard Entertainment employee here. And you can see here with their experience and everything, what they are working on. And they have under the Senior Director of Product Management, they've worked on Overwatch 2 for PC and console. And then they have here unannounced AAA RPG FPS title for PC and console. So Blizzard is working on some new things. That to me is extremely exciting. We're going to see a new single player RPG experience from Blizzard, and obviously first person shooter, which they have lots of experience in, and they make great FPS games. So that's just another game to look forward to. We have no idea when this is going to be announced, when it's going to come out, when we're going to see gameplay or anything like that. Maybe at the 2025 Xbox Game Showcase, it will be announced. So more games to look forward to in the pipeline for Xbox and Game Pass and wherever else that they will end up releasing, because that's always going to be a discussion now whenever Xbox announces a new game, is will it be coming to the PlayStation 5 or will it only be within the Xbox ecosystem? Okay, Concord released. We know this game has done terribly. You look at the Steam numbers, they fell to like 50 something, like 57 or something like that at one point. It's just been an abysmal failure, and Sony is going to lose a ton of money off of this game. It's one of the biggest failures probably in PlayStation history, I would like to say. I'd have to do some deeper research on that, but it just really seems like it is one of the worst things that they have put out in terms of a commercial success. And there was talk that maybe PlayStation players, console players were playing this game and buying it up, and it was actually doing well on PlayStation, so the Steam numbers weren't as big of a deal as people were making it out to be. And to nobody's surprise, that is absolutely not the case. This game is not doing well on PlayStation whatsoever. It says here, according to a new report from IGN citing analyst Simon Careless, it's claimed that games have sold around 10,000 copies on Steam and just 15,000 on PlayStation. So 25,000 copies across Steam and PlayStation. And just obviously not what PlayStation was looking for a online multiplayer shooter, games as a service style of game that they're hoping will have longevity of people playing this for years and then spending lots of time in the game itself. That's not going to be the case. They may shut this game down in like a year or so. Who knows how long they will actually keep this thing alive after many, many years of development, and at the same time closing studios, canceling games for this to come out, basically like choosing this over those other games, which is crazy to think about that, how big of a failure this has been. It does say here, PlayStation doesn't typically release specific sales figures. Concord has struggled to find a player base on Steam since its launch. The game, which was developed by Firewalk and published by PlayStation, currently has 70 players in the game at the right time of writing this article, which is September 1st, which was yesterday. So just insane. And the game has just received over 700 Steam reviews, and 512 which are positive, 220 which are negative. And I don't think that the actual game itself, the way it plays and everything, because I played the beta, I don't think that is the real issue of this game. I don't think it is a badly made game. There's a couple of things that have definitely hindered it. One, I mean, the player design or the character designs are just terrible. The $40 price tag, this should have been a free to play game, and it has released in a genre that already has so many things out there, and it doesn't set itself apart. So people aren't going to jump over and play Concord for $40 when they're already playing other games that are free to play and they've spent hours and hours and hours into. They're just going to continue with that. That's where their friends play. That's what they know. For them, it's just probably not worth it to spend the $40 on Concord itself. So, I mean, at the end of the day, this is going to be a big failure for PlayStation and for the people that worked on this game. And unfortunately, a lot of people put a lot of time and effort into it, but we'll see where it goes from here. How long are they going to support it? Are they going to cancel it after a year? Are they going to try to revive it by just doing some crazy changes to it? Maybe making it a free to play game in a few months? All of these things are still in question as to what PlayStation is going to do with Concord. Now, when it comes to Visions of Mana, this game just recently released, got some decent reviews. I think it's sitting around like a 75, 76, 77 range, which on Metacritic, a lot of people look at that and think it's crap, but it's still decent overall, good scores for the game itself. And from what I've been hearing, it has some of the best combat in the Mana series, and I'm going to play it eventually. But it looks like the studio behind it is going to be closing down. Now, this is a very, very interesting story because I think it kind of shows the changing landscape of the gaming industry. Now, the reason why this is closing down is because you have investments into Japanese studios by NetEase and Tencent that are being scaled back overall. It says here, a Bloomberg report claims both companies are starting to rethink their strategy because it is yet to bear any significant fruit. According to the report, NetEase has cut all but a handful of jobs at Shibuya-based Uaka, I have no idea if I said that right, whose Visions of Mana was only just released on Thursday. The company reportedly plans to close the studio with the remaining staff overseeing the release of its final games first. And while neither NetEase or Tencent show any signs of wanting to completely pull out of Japan, the report claims that both companies are starting to rethink their strategy in the country, which saw them making large investments in an attempt to build a catalog of big budget AAA games. And why I think this is extremely interesting is because we just got the release of Black Myth Wukong, a Tencent-backed game that has sold phenomenally well, mainly in China. I mean, that's where most of these sales have hit. And maybe these companies are looking at all these investments that they have put out and starting to think, we don't need to do that. We don't need to appeal to these other regions. We don't need to invest in these other regions if we're going to be able to create games and back games that are being developed within China and then sell it to our massive population and make tons of money that way. We can get better return on investment that way rather than doing these investments in to other countries where some games just may not do as well as they expect it to do. I mean, you saw Black Myth Wukong just do extremely well. Again, in China, they sold tons of copies. It was extremely marketed there from what I was able to read and see just from following the game and everything. So it really got propped up and everybody wanted to play it there. And that makes a huge difference. And that's a Tencent back game, which Tencent is going to be massive in expanding out and continuing to try to compete as one of the biggest gaming publishers out there. So they're going to have to look at their strategy and decide whether it is worth it to appeal to these other regions or to work with these other regions in order to try to sell games that may not do as well if they can just develop games within China, sell them to the Chinese customers and make tons of money that way. So that's going to be an interesting landscape to see how that plays out, because it's not the same thing here where it's like Xbox can go and make a game and just try to sell it to everybody in China. There's obviously many different rules there. A lot of games get banned there, where it's not the same here in the West. So that'll be a landscape that continues to shift and change, and we'll see what happens to the other studios that they do back. Are they going to pull out investments there in other parts of the world, and how will that affect the games that are going to be coming out? Now, if you like Batman, it looks like there will be a new Batman game based on the film universe, which is great. I mean, we need a new mainline Batman game, another Arkham game or something like that. Obviously, with Rocksteady, the whole Suicide Squad thing happened. That was a bad choice for the game that they should have gone and made. It would have been great if they just made a new Batman game. But it looks like we may be getting something soon. This comes according to Puck News. A game is currently being developed based on the Matt Reeves directed film, which saw Robert Pattinson star in the main role. Now, this report is coming that AT&T, as we know, they've been trying to sell Warner Brothers Entertainment video games. We've been seeing reports here that there's other companies that want to jump in and get it. And there's talk about maybe Xbox wanting to jump in and get it, and Batman being that superhero that could take on Spider-Man that PlayStation has, all of that stuff. But as of right now, it looks like David Zaslav, who took over as CEO, was advised to offload Warner Brothers, but is thinking that that isn't going to be the case, and that they would rather just go out there and make a Batman game. It says here, Zaslav reportedly sees the games unit as strategic, with the report claiming that the various WBD divisions are beginning to collaborate more closely on properties like the upcoming Penguin HBO show and game, both seated in the 2022 The Batman movie. So we could end up seeing soon something announced here for a brand new Batman game. The most recent Batman game that we have seen has been the MetaQuest 3 exclusive game that I'm sure it's going to be fun if you have a MetaQuest 3. But let's be real here. Most gamers, nobody was asking for that. They wanted a mainline third-person action adventure Batman game to play on the latest consoles and on PC and everything. So hopefully this does happen. We'll see how good it ends up being, of course, and who develops it. That's all going to be in question when this eventually does get announced, if it does officially get announced. And finally, we have this here. Hideaku Itsuno is leaving Capcom after 30 years. Worked on Devil May Cry series 3 to 5, I believe, and Dragon's Dogma. He's a huge asset here, and it looks like he's going somewhere else. There's a lot of speculation as to where he potentially could be going. We don't know, but it is going to be a major pickup for whoever picks up Itsuno. He puts out this announcement. I have an announcement for all my followers. At the end of August 2024, I will be leaving Capcom after 30 years and 5 months. Thank you for the long-term support of the games and characters I have been responsible for. I hope you will continue to support Capcom's games and characters. From September, I will start developing a new game in a new environment. I hope to create fun, beautiful games that are as memorable as, or even more memorable than, the ones I have created so far. So please stay tuned for my next creation. So he's going somewhere else. He's still going to be creating games, which is great. We'll see if he's starting his own thing, if he's being picked up by another major company. See things like maybe Square Enix picks him up. Who knows? But Itsuno is leaving Capcom, which I think is a major loss, and we'll see where he jumps to next. But I'll end the video there, guys. If you did enjoy this video, hit that thumbs up. If you're new here, hit that subscribe, and I will catch you guys in the next video.